Hey, everybody. Give you a few seconds here to filter in before we get started. All right. Good morning, everybody. I see that we're filtering in. Welcome to our November webinar from the Central Atlanta Area Agency on Aging. Our topic today is "'Tis the Season: What You Need to Know About Vaccines." Just a quick couple housekeeping rules. I know a lot of you have been with us before, but for Zoom, we are in the webinar mode, and so you are automatically muted. You cannot see other participants. You will see the speakers and the hosts. You are free to ask questions in the Q&A or the chat box if anything pops up. We are being recorded today, and if you want to share this recording or watch it later, we're going to put it on our website later. Also, I will be sending out a certificate of attendance if you're here today, and I will send you a direct link to that page on our website as well. All right, guys, let's get started. So today we have Dr. Tia Robertson. She is the medical director for Gaston County Public Health. And as Gaston County's Public Health Medical Director, Dr. Robertson oversees the agency's provision of clinical services and supervises the work of physicians and providers. She also leads the department in delivering health and human services for the entire community and acts as a liaison to other local health agencies and community health partners. We are very excited to have her here today, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Caitlin, for the very generous introduction there. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning to talk to you about vaccines. I'm going to start off with just talking about my first memory of what vaccines mean and how it relates to people in our daily lives. One time I went home with my mother to visit her place of origin in Florida. And she was telling me about some of her high school friends that she was going to meet up with. Um, and she said, and then there's my one friend, Angie, and you'll know her because she has a limp. She still carries this limp that she's had since she was a young girl because she had polio. And at the time, I didn't quite understand what that meant and how that would impact my understanding later on in life. But basically, during the early, 1930s, 1940s, there was, polio was very prevalent. And before the vaccine became widespread and it was used pretty much part of our scheduled immunizations, people were becoming infected with polio and suffering severe illnesses as a result. And some people ended up with lifelong um, issues or handicaps. And this is what happened with her. And we don't really think about polio or any of the other diseases like measles and mumps in this day and age because we have vaccines, we have medications that can help to prevent those diseases from becoming prevalent again in our society and causing lifelong medical problems. So I want to start this presentation off with the fact that vaccines are important. They're important on an individual level because they can help prevent diseases. They're important in terms of our workplace because it helps to continue the economy so that people can go to work and be healthy and be safe. And then it's also healthy in general for our community. If you have healthy individuals who are living long and they're able to go to work and make a living and be able to spend time with their families and live long lives with high quality, then it helps the ultimate growth of our communities and what we're able to do as a society as a whole. So I'd like to advance to our next slide here, which is, what I'm going to focus on today for more seasoned population would be the diseases named influenza, shingles, and pneumococcal disease. We're going to touch on those because those preventable diseases are can cause severe disease in our more seasoned population. So first, let's start off with the flu. Of course, as I mentioned before, the flu can cause mild to severe respiratory illness. It's highly contagious, and it's really one of our seasonal viruses. There are multiple viruses with the flu, and it's a very challenging situation because that virus is constantly mutating and changing, so much so that every year we have to develop a new vaccine. Before we advance to the next slide, I'd like to take a moment to watch this quick YouTube video explaining what influenza virus does for our bodies and how we create antibodies to help to fight it.
Flu is a contagious respiratory illness caused by influenza viruses. When people with flu cough or sneeze, you can inhale droplets that contain flu viruses. The viruses infect your cells and make copies of themselves. Flu virus infection triggers inflammation in your body, which produces flu symptoms. Severe inflammation can cause lung damage and other serious problems. Your body's immune system responds by sending proteins called antibodies to fight the infection. Some people experience serious flu complications that can lead to hospitalization and even death. Flu vaccines have been shown to reduce the risk of catching flu and may lessen the severity of symptoms. Everyone 6 months and older needs flu vaccine each year. Join the fight against flu. Learn more at cdc.gov/fightflu.
That was an excellent 1-minute video from the CDC, just talking again about how flu is spread and what we can do to prevent it from spreading to ourselves and to the community. On the next slide, I'd like to mention what happened in 1918 through 1919 during the very first century or documented pandemic for the 19th century, 20th century. And that was an H1N1 influenza pandemic. Of course, that was before we had any vaccines available for the flu. At that time, the H1N1 pandemic infected 500 million people globally. It caused around 50 million deaths, and about 675,000 of those deaths were in the United States. Annually, here in the United States, as of recent years, we see on average about 45 million people in America become sick from an influenza infection. Of that 45 million, 810,000 are diagnosed with severe disease, which require hospitalization. And then to bring things even more current, the 2023-24 influenza season has already started to cause death in our state of North Carolina in October. The last 2 weeks of October, we have documented our first few deaths related to or caused by influenza virus. So as you can see, the flu is very deadly, can be very deadly, but it's also preventable. And I'd like for you to listen to one more video from our state health director, Dr. Betsy Tilson, discussing the importance of vaccination and efforts to prevent influenza in our state of North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Dr. Betsy Tilson, the State Health Director for North Carolina. It's flu season, and getting your annual flu vaccine is as important as ever to protect you and your loved ones. The flu is a very contagious virus and can be serious or even deadly, especially for infants, older adults, and people who have underlying health conditions. Vaccines are proven to make you less likely to get the flu, and if you do catch the virus, you are less likely to have a severe illness. Vaccines work by triggering our bodies to produce antibodies. Antibodies help our immune system fight off the virus if we are exposed. That helps us stay healthy. A new flu vaccine is developed every year to protect against the strains of the virus that will be most common for the current season. Flu infections are most common from late fall to early spring in North Carolina, with activity usually peaking in January or February. Don't wait to vaccinate. The sooner you get your annual flu shot, the more time you have to build up immunity before the virus becomes widespread. It takes about 2 weeks for your flu vaccine to become most effective. Flu vaccines are available at little to no cost at pharmacies, clinics, medical offices, hospitals, federally qualified health centers, and local health departments across the state. You can find vaccine locations in your area by visiting www.vaccines.gov or by heading to www.myspot.nc.gov.
Excellent. I'd like to touch on a couple of points there that Dr. Tolson mentioned. And one is that the annual flu vaccine is offered and is offered to anyone that's 6 months old and older. And it's an annual flu vaccine because, as I've mentioned before, the virus mutates and changes. And so we have to update the vaccine every year to give you the most the highest degree of protection available for the strain that's most dominant for each season each year. We like to offer the vaccines starting in September and October, right before flu activity peaks. The reason is because it takes about 2 weeks for your body to develop the mount up the response after you get the flu shot. And then we want you to have a good, robust immune system as we go into the season and activity typically starts to peak. And on the next slide, you'll see there that I mentioned September throughout, offered in September throughout the season. And then I also have a note there about July and August. So because children typically can get with 2 shots for the flu, we like to start in July. We can offer the flu shot for children in July and or August before the general September, October initiation for flu shots for the general public. And for our seasoned population who are 65 years and older, we prefer to start. We prefer for you to get your flu shot in September or October. In addition to that being one difference with the seasoned population, we'd also like for the seasoned population who are 65 years and older to get a higher dose flu shot to offer you more protection throughout the season of flu. As an update, currently flu activity is fairly low in our area, but it's starting to increase across the country. So if you have not received your flu vaccine at this point in time, even though we are in early November, it's still a great idea to get it now. It's not too late to get it. We will offer flu vaccines throughout the course of the season, but for next year, if you can, try to get that vaccine September or October, as early as you can in those 2 months. All right. So the next topic I'm going to move to is shingles. Shingles is caused by a virus called named varicella zoster. And varicella zoster also causes another disease called chickenpox. 99% of people who were born before 1980 have been infected with chickenpox naturally, a natural infection. I know when I was a kid, parents almost seemed to want their child to get chickenpox so they'll have it and be done with it and they can move on with life and they'll have that natural immunity. Well, because varicella zoster causes chickenpox and shingles, what happens is after you have or get over chickenpox, the virus actually doesn't go anywhere. It stays in your body dormant and doesn't do anything. It's just inactivated. But there's certain things that can happen in your life that can increase the risk of this inactivation turning off, and then it becomes activated and you'll develop shingles. So if you've had a history of chickenpox, you'll have that virus in your body, so that that puts you at an increased risk for developing shingles in the future. Shingles typically develops as we age, like the risk for it increases as we age. So If you're 50 years old or older, then you are at an increased risk for developing shingles, especially if you've had a natural infection of chickenpox early on in childhood. The other risk factor for developing shingles is being immunocompromised, either by a disease state or if you're taking immunosuppressive medications. Both can increase your risk for developing shingles by reactivating that varicella zoster that's been lying dormant in your body, in your cells. However, yet again, this is a disease that is preventable. We have a vaccine for shingles, and this vaccine has been shown to be 90% effective in preventing the shingles disease. There's another side, there's another condition that's associated with shingles called post-herpetic neuralgia, and it's a very painful condition. And our data has shown that those who receive the shingles vaccine also have an 89% rate of being effective in preventing this post-herpetic neuralgia syndrome that can occur if you happen to develop shingles. So again, the point I'm driving home is vaccines are very important in terms of preventing disease and helping us to live a healthier and longer life. So we'll talk more about when you get shingles vaccine, as I said, 50 years and older. And then we'll look at a big schedule to kind of keep up with all of these different vaccines as to when you should get it and how often you need to get them. So we'll move on to our next disease, and that's the pneumococcal disease. Pneumococcal is different from the other two I mentioned because it's caused by bacteria. This bacteria is called Streptococcus pneumoniae. And this disease state can result in pneumonia, a bacteremia. Bacteremia is basically a big word, but it describes when the bacteria gets into the bloodstream. It can become really septic and extremely sick. Meningitis and otitis media are all caused by this particular bacteria. On the next slide, you'll see our remedy to this, and it's the pneumococcal vaccine. There are different types of pneumococcal vaccines available, and we have some newer ones that were recently developed. The trade name is Prevnar, and you have the conjugated vaccines, and then there's something called polysaccharide vaccines, and it's a whole lot of big words, but basically they all protect you against this pneumococcal disease. For those of us who are 65 years or older, the CDC recommends the PCV 15 or the PCV 20. These PCV 15 and 20 are both conjugated vaccines, and data has shown that conjugated vaccines have decreased the rates of pneumococcal disease significantly since their initiation. So we're still collecting data on the newer forms that we've developed, but so far the future is very promising in terms of how effective they're going to be moving forward. So the next thing I want to do is just spend a little bit of time reviewing the adult immunization schedule. So kind of put everything into perspective about when you should get certain vaccines and when you shouldn't get other vaccines, or if you can combine any at all. So I'm going to click here. I'm not sure if it's going to show up on my screen and if you can see it.
If you share your screen, it should show up for us
Okay.
there.
Yep.
Perfect.
All right. So I am sharing this screen. You can see here that I'm on the CDC website. We have a number of vaccines listed here. We have the age ranges, 19 to 26 years old, 27 to 49, 50 to 60, and greater than 65 years old. And I'm going to quickly run through our legend. If it's in gold, that means it's recommended vaccination for adults who meet age requirement. lack documentation of history of vaccination or evidence of past infection. Lavender here is recommended vaccination for adults with an additional risk factor or another indication. Blue, recommended vaccination based on shared clinical decision making. And then if it's gray, not recommended or not applicable for this particular age group. All right. So we're not focusing so much on COVID-19 today, but I do, since it's on the list, I just want to mention it here. 2 or 3 dose primary series and boosters for all ages, that for all adult ages. This is just for adults, not for children, this particular schedule that we're looking at now. And this is going to be good too. I like to show this and walk you through it because a lot of times people can watch webinars or they can see information. And then, you may have the tools to look up things, but you may not be familiar with how to read it or how to interpret it. So we're just going to kind of walk through this. I'm going to help you interpret this particular schedule. And then we're going to kind of sum things up and be open for questions. So moving forward here again, we have our influenza inactivated, influenza recombinant, and then influenza live attenuated. So there are 3 different types of vaccines for influenza, which is the flu. For the inactivated and recombinant vaccines, is 1 dose annually. And again, that particular vaccine that's going to be modified every year to adjust to the new strand of influenza virus. And this is gold all the way across, which means that this is one vaccine that's suitable for anyone 19 years of age and older, as indicated here, 1 dose annually. This influenza live attenuated, and this is the abbreviation for it. It's 1 dose annually, so you can get this one or this one. However, it's not indicated for people who are 50 years old or older. So you can get this one if you're less than 50, but this inactivated or recombinant type of vaccine is available and applicable and recommended for all ages, adult ages greater than 19 years old. We didn't talk much about tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. But again, this is a gold strip here. This applies to anyone greater than 19 years old. Measles, mumps, and rubella. I'm going to go back up here. 65, healthcare personnel. This one, I believe, is a special note because of the age of being born after 1957 and what that could imply in terms of your natural immunity at that point in time. Varicella, and then I'm not going to touch much on that one. It's also recombinant, not going to touch much on that. It's kind of self-explanatory now. We're looking at the gold. If you're 50 years old, it's recommended if you have additional risk factors for varicella. I'm going to skip down to a couple of the ones that I just spoke to you about, and that's the pneumococcal. As you can see here, you have your conjugated vaccines, PCV15 and PCV20. Those are the 2 I just mentioned. Those are Prevnar trade name. And then you have your PPSV23. That's your polysaccharide. So if you are 19 to 65 years old, here's the recommendation. And then if you are 65 or older, you have here C notes. So let's just click on this C notes and you can see what that says. And this is on pneumococcal vaccination. So here you are. If you follow the link, you'll see that it takes you to age 65 years or older, have not previously received a dose, and it goes to this whole list of numbers and names that you may not be very familiar with, but your healthcare provider would be. So basically, it's just explaining that if you've received any of the other vaccines that were previously available or were being used more prevalently, you may have a different schedule or may not be required to receive another dose of the current vaccines that are in circulation at this point in time. So I just want to go over that. Again, hepatitis A and B, meningococcal, and then Haemophilus influenza type B. This is just a brief overview of how to access information at the CDC's website, and then how to kind of walk through it, click on hyperlinks to learn a little bit more about what it means, and learn how to analyze this particular tool, this resource. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and let's see if I know how to do stop share. There we go. And we're going to move forward with the presentation as we wrap things up before the questions. Takeaway points. Again, I just want to reiterate that vaccines are very important because they help to prevent disease and the consequences of diseases. They help to keep our families and our communities safe. They help us to be able to live healthy and long lives and be prosperous in the work that we do. This completes my portion of the presentation. This is a list of references, and now I'll open up the floor to any questions that you might have.
This is Cindy. We have 2 in the questions and answers. And if anyone has any questions, please just enter those in the question and answers, and we'll work through those. There are a few in the chat, and we'll get to those if we have time. The first one is, there are 3 different vaccines for the flu. Who, the patient or the doctor, determines which vaccine you should receive? I think many of us receive a vaccine from a provider and what they have available.
Correct. And they will go through, most places aren't going to give you the live attenuated vaccine. Most aren't going to carry that. Most will just carry the recombinant and the inactivated versions, because those are the safest. But if you're in an area that does offer all 3, then they would have a checklist to either rule you in or rule you out for the option to receive the ones that you don't qualify for.
And then the next question is, the majority of people know that they got a pneumonia vaccine, but have no idea if they got a PCV 7, 13, 15, 20, and on and on. So knowing what type they need now is questionable.
Yes, that's an excellent question. So we have records whenever anyone gets immunized, and it goes into a state system, and we're able to look back and see which ones you received. If for some reason there's still a question, say someone came from India or South Africa or any other place, and there's a question, then you would just get you'll get that vaccine at that time if it's questionable. But you wouldn't necessarily have to be responsible for knowing that off the top of your head, because most people will not. But if you have your history of your immunizations, you can bring that in, and the provider who's giving you the immunization will take a look at that and review and give you all the information you need. And again, if you're already in our system, we have a good list of all your immunizations, then we can go from there.
RSV vaccination, is it important to receive if you are 65 or older and have cardiac issues? And I know we did talk a lot about RSV, so you may want to maybe give a quick update on what that is.
Yes. So RSVP is an infection, a respiratory infection that can be, again, very severe. We have vaccines for RSVP. Oh, you know what? I keep saying RSVPs because there's a wedding coming up, and so actually it's RSV. So I have to catch myself when I say that. But RSV is a respiratory virus that can put you in a hospital. It can be very severe, especially if you have other comorbidities such as cardiac problems or other issues with your respiratory system like pneumonia or COPD. Those are all risk factors for having a severe case of RSV. And so, yes, the vaccine is recommended for those who are 65 years and older. It's also recommended for, and this isn't necessarily in your population, but you may have a daughter or granddaughter who's pregnant, and the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists highly, strongly supports the administration of the RSV vaccine to women who are between 32 and 36 weeks of gestational age, because they can provide some additional protection for the infant up to 6 to 7 months after delivery. So it's and children, especially within the first year of birth, are at increased risk for developing RSV. And it's recommended for all children to receive a vaccine if they're between 8 months and 19 months and if it's their first or second RSV season.
That's fascinating. That sounds like a whole thing in and of itself.
Liz.
I had 2 heart attacks back in 22. I'm 66 years old. This season, I already got a flu and an RSV vaccine. I am scheduled to get my COVID booster on Monday, the 13th. Should I also get a pneumonia vaccine that same day?
So you can get the COVID vaccine with other vaccines. It's not contraindicated. I would, so I'm not sure what your reaction was to the COVID, to your boosters for the COVID vaccine. Some people don't have any reactions. Some feel under the weather for a bit. If that's the case for you, I would recommend just doing one at a time. And you only need to get that pneumococcal vaccine once if you're 50 years or older. So if you're not due for that, you don't necessarily have to get that particular vaccine at this time. Now, I don't see that question in the chat, so I don't know
That's
if she's
okay.
responding or not.
And kind of a follow-up to that one is the pneumonia. And this is where the ages, and this is just me personally adding on to this question. Because I know at a flu clinic, I had asked about a pneumonia vaccine. So should you get it at 50 or older, or is it a 65 or older?
Pneumonia, you can get it at 50 and older.
Okay, because she told me not to get it till I was 65. So I was just interested.
Yeah, well, the CDC recommends 50 years and older, you can have that. So I believe previously it was 65 and older for that particular one. But you can get it at 50 years old. Let me double check and make sure I'm telling you the right thing. But
does it hurt?
I'm
if
sorry.
You get
Yes.
it early?
It is 65 for pneumococcal. As I was speaking that, I was thinking I was getting confused with shingles. Shingles is 50. Pneumococcal is 65 years and older. So
Okay.
in my presentation, if you scroll back up, it's 65 years. Shingles is 50. So yes, you can get pneumococcal earlier if you have some other comorbidities that are concerning, whereby you would need to get it sooner. But 65 years for the general population. So she is correct in saying 65. 50
Okay.
for shingles.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then I think you already answered this, but I'll ask it to make sure. Do older adults need to get the RSV vaccine?
Yes. And I probably could have included a little bit more information about the RSV vaccine for this presentation, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later, or I can send something out so you guys can have that to read. But yes, it is recommended for those 65 years in order to get the RSV vaccine.
And then what if you don't know if you had the chicken pox?
Yeah, so a lot of people may not know if they've had it, but if you were born before 1980, you probably did, even if it was a mild case. If you're unsure if you had the chicken pox, you should still get the shingles vaccine, because it can still prevent you from developing shingles, or being infected with shingles.
So, and then we have a couple more. how long should one wait to get the flu shot after having COVID? This is for a 65 and older
Okay. And
adult.
I said earlier, I want to say, I said before developing shingles, shingles is a disease state. So before contracting the varicella zoster virus. So I like to be very clear about a virus versus a disease state, right? So you contract the virus that causes something. So the virus causes shingles, and you may not have picked up on it, but I wanted to make sure if anyone's watching the replay that I clarified that. So, and your question was, how long should you wait after being sick with COVID before you get the flu shot?
Yes.
After you feel well. So
Okay.
once you feel better and you're no longer having a fever, your symptoms have improved, then you can get the flu shot.
And then there was a question also about a question about receiving multiple vaccinations. Pneumonia, flu, RSV, and COVID have been requested at one time for some of my clients. And should that be discouraged, or is that an okay thing?
That's a lot of vaccines to get all at once. We do COVID and flu together. And the RSV, yes. And then the pneumococcal, they're all very minimal side effects. You can get multiple vaccines all at once if that's the preference. You can space them out if you like to, but I would prioritize obviously the ones that are seasonal, the respiratory ones. So I would definitely get your COVID and your influenza if you wanted to separate those up. And then in the RSV, because RSV is it kind of pairs up with flu. Right now, we saw trends that were trending up last year, around November, December, and so we'll probably see that again this year. So yes, I would focus on getting those seasonal respiratory vaccines if you wanted to prioritize. But you'd probably be okay with getting the multiple vaccines the same day if that was a necessity.
Yeah, she does answer back that says this is typically the case for my clients who reside in nursing homes or
Mhm.
assisted living facilities. So it's kind of a one visit attempt at
Yeah.
getting everything covered. And then there's a question about, you had mentioned asking for a higher dose flu shot, and will my provider know whether I need a higher dose, and does it happen automatically, or do I need to ask for it?
It doesn't hurt to always be an advocate for yourself and say, hey, I'm 65 or I'm 72 or 85 and I want to get the high dose flu vaccine. So it doesn't hurt to do that, but that should be something that's evaluated and assessed for and provided when you are requesting your vaccination.
And then it says, if they don't have a higher dose, should someone get a second shot later in the season?
No, you
Okay,
only
so
need one shot.
okay. And then there's a question about, why does shingles have 2 shots, and what happens if I miss the second shot?
So there are various shingles typically are 2 shots for, I want to say that's for the younger population. So if you fall off the schedule for your shot for any vaccine, you can always follow up. There's normally a time period or grace period that you'll be allowed before you might need to get a booster or the second half of that. So I would check, and it depends on how long of a separation in time for the shingles shots, the first and second one. And but that's just a conversation with your provider to get you back on the schedule if you need to be, or you may just be within the grace period.
And then there's a question that says, can you explain the key differences in the pneumococcal vaccines? All the different numbers.
There are different so there are different proteins that are attached to the capsule, and they operate differently in how they get inside the cell or how they work within the cell. So that's like a really high level explanation of what those different numbers mean. And essentially, the most important point to take away is that uh, the newer versions are more effective in terms of the specificity for the pneumococcal um, uh, bacteria and its ability to eliminate it from the body.
Is the pneumonia vaccine similar to the flu in that they have to create a new one each year, or is it the same vaccine no matter when it's given?
Right. No, it's not like flu. Flu is a the pneumococcal is a bacteria. The pneumonia is a virus, and the virus replicates much quicker than it replicates quicker. That's just the nature of it. And so it's the virus is like any organism. It is an organism. Its single sole goal in life is to survive. And so it's going to evolve quickly. You know, as humans, we evolve over thousands and centuries, you know, thousands of years and centuries and decades and such. But a virus can evolve in a few seconds or minutes or so. And so their sole purpose is to survive. And with that being the case, they mutate rather quickly. And so we have to develop the new strand to keep up with that every year. That's not the case with the pneumococcal bacteria.
And then we have a question that says, if you are on Aclovir, do you still need to get the shingles vaccine? ACYCLOVIR.
They're taking that regularly. I don't see that on my chat. These
It's in the question and answers.
I see. Okay, acyclovir. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. And I was like, I'm not quite sure what medication that is. So acyclovir, yes, you still need to get that. Even if you're on medication, you should still get your shingles vaccine.
All right, and let me just make sure. All right, no more questions there.
Yeah, I think that's all I see. And that was a lot of questions. So thank you guys for your participation. And thank you, Dr. Robertson, for answering all of our questions.
You're welcome. You all were a very robust group, and I loved the engagement and the questions that you had. So very good.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I think that's it for today. So we will see you next time. And if you need anything, you can shoot me an email. If you have any questions for Dr. Robertson, we can pass them on to her as well. But thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Robertson. We appreciate the time and the great information.
Thank you for having me on. I'd love to come back and talk more. If there's a need, if there's a desire to have me come back and discuss a little bit more about vaccines, I'll be happy to do it. So just
We
let me know.
appreciate it. We'll catch you after the first of the year. You got a busy little bit coming up.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.